implementation lead, and Deep Bajwa, our design lead. And we're all generally developers as well. Of course, you all know that. Our client is Mr. Wilbert Ochoa, and our advisor is Dr. Anvik. In this presentation, we'll address the following problem. We'll have an overview of the project, our risks and management of those risks, project requirements, high-level design, and lessons learned. So the problem we're addressing here is that an iPad app for young journalism students does not exist. We as a team, we believe that new technologies need to be in the classroom at a young age, and as well as up-to-date software along with these technologies. Therefore, our goal is to make this iPad app for use in Mr. Ochoa's classroom. Mr. Ochoa is a middle school teacher at Foothills Middle School in Wenatchee, Washington. Foothills Middle School has been somewhat of a prototype school for using iPads in their teaching. Their school district, Wenatchee School District, will eventually roll out iPads in every classroom within the district. Our approach to this project is an agile approach. We anticipate many changes at any point due to our experience level and the learning curve of this project. Also, with this process, we can be aware of what Mr. Ochoa's requirements are and better accommodate him, and also keep our sanity at a moderate level. And now here is Deep to talk about our risk management.
So here are some of the potential risks that we ran into and the likelihood of some of the risks that could happen over the course of the project. So to success in managing the project, we understand the nature of the risk and we have a plan in place. So the first one is a client location. Our client lives in Wenatchee, and it's really hard to commute every week to Wenatchee. So our approach was to held weekly Skype meetings, exchange emails, and talk on the phones if possible. And another second risk was that our app not compatible with older iPads. So since Gabriel mentioned that Wenatchee Foothill School or Wenatchee District School, they're going to roll out iPad 2 by the end of 2014, and we're using Xcode 5. It's a newer version of Xcode IDE for development. So there could be compatibility issues, but we did some research and it's highly unlikely that we might run into some of the risk in terms of compatibility. Third, loss of data in case something happens to our development system or we lose the data while we're programming. So we currently have an offsite version control system where we push our data on a frequent basis, and we use thumb drive and laptops, personal laptops, so we don't lose our data. Fourth, learning Objective-C, since none of us has any prior experience with Objective-C. So we went through a lot of YouTube tutorials, and there are some apps on App Store that shows the tutorials for Objective-C and using Xcode IDE. Second, software development tools that we're using for our project. The first is Jira. It's an issue tracking system which enables us to capture issues, plan work, and resolve conflicts. Second, Mercurial. It's our issue tracking. It's our version control system, and at present, the only successful client that we could find was a source tree, and it's on our Bitbucket repositories. And third, Xcode. Apparently, Xcode is the only IDE for developing iOS applications. For our designing tools, we're using Microsoft Visio for class diagrams, architecture designs, and Pencil is another good software for project mockups, and GIMP, which is similar to Photoshop for editing. And here are some of the functional requirements that are defined by our stakeholder, Mr. Ochoa. And the essential task that we must have it is the student must be able to add a newspaper within the app, format the newspaper in different ways if they want to position the text or pictures in the app, and edit the text directly or add photos. Another desirable features that our client like to have, and depending how much time we have or how fast we get things done. The first one is to have a spell checker or a dictionary similar to Microsoft Word. So while the students are writing newspapers, they will have the ability to autocorrect the text and or import audio and video files. Deadline notifications is similar to Canvas, so the students know when things are due. And the student would have the ability to access newspaper submitted by other student in that class and the student from other classes as well. Non-functional requirements, we realized that since we're going to design this app for middle school students, interface should be simple and easy to use, so we're going to use more icons than labels. And the system should be secured, so only authorized students would be able to log in. So suppose somebody download the app from App Store, they wouldn't be able to log in because they wouldn't have authorized logins. Fourth, another good feature that our client really wants us to have it's an integration of Google Drive in our app, so the student can take advantage of Google Docs and be able to view the other files within the app. And now Kyle will present high-level design for our project.
Okay, for the high-level design, we have for each newspaper we're going to be making, or the students are going to be making, there's going to be an article collection, and each article is going to be multiple articles, and then there's going to be an image collection with multiple images in that. And then this newspaper is one example of a view that our app is going to be contained. Our app will contain multiple views. That's one example of them, and it's all going to be within one view collection. For our testing, for our unit testing, we're using XCTest, which is a framework that is built into Xcode that we will be taking advantage of. For our integration testing, at the present time, our integration testing plan is to get our app and our remote database talking. And for our database, we're going to try to use MySQL. And Gcov and CoverStory are two tools that will be used for our code coverage. For acceptance testing, every week our client gives us feedback on our current prototype, and we'll continue into the next quarter via weekly Skype meetings, as we said earlier. Installation testing, as we stated, we will be trying to borrow an iPad 2 from Mr. Ochoa to do testing to make sure everything is compatible. Usability testing, we are going to try at an appropriate date and time to have 2 or more students from Mr. Ochoa's class to make sure everything is, to give us feedback on our app. And now I'll walk you through a paper prototype. So when you first open the app, you're going to see this log on screen, and you need to type in admin and the password, or admin login and the password is student ID and the password. And then this will look an example of what the student would see as the newspaper canvas, where there's multiple pages of the newspaper. You can import, export pictures, undo, save, pretty much anything command in a normal, typical editor you find on a computer. This next slide is the admin page, where right now it only shows one class, but you'll have multiple classes, and within each class you can view the student's paper they submitted, and it's going to be organized by most recently submitted paper. And next slide. And now we're going to go through a live use case of what we have so far. Okay, so this is when you first open it up. And this is like a simple newspaper, what they would see. There's also going to be more functionality to it later. There's not all the buttons aren't added yet, and pretty much we have support with the student. Well, yeah, I'll go back to the admin page. Go to the admin page. And this is what the admin will see. Our client wanted it to look like a Metro theme. Like we got, I guess, like from Windows 8, but this is close we can come up with that. And he really liked it so far, so that's it for our live use case. For the conclusions, for our lessons learned, was a communication. Our inter-team communication hasn't been the best, so in the future we want to manage our time better to alleviate this. On the other hand, the communication with our client has been getting better over time. Before we had like one Skype meeting every 3 weeks, now we're having a weekly Skype meeting with him. And then working with Max was a big lesson learned. It's having its difficulties. There are some things we're all used to on PCs that does not exist on Macs. We really did not anticipate this, but we plan on relying on Stack Overflow and YouTube and other sources to help with our issues.
So, to review, we're making a journalism iPad app. It doesn't exist, so we want to make one for Mr. Ochoa. It needs to be, your basic full newspaper. It needs to be secure. It needs to be easy to use. We're using an agile approach, and it's obviously an Objective-C. So, are there any questions? Yes, sir.
I have 2 questions. First question is: Are you using the storyboard workflow?
Yes.
Okay. Second question is: what kind of backend are you using? I mean, let me rephrase that. Are you going to be retrieving data through like SOAP or XML RPC, or is there going to be sort of a centralized?
Well, we haven't gotten that far quite yet, but I'm sure. We've got to have some sort of framework or something that will talk with our database.
Any other questions? Dr. Schwing?
So I was trying to understand how classes would become enrolled. Is this student self-enrolling, or is there going to be
Well, this is for
an automated thing that gets enrolling all the students?
Well, on the admin page, he's going to be adding classes because he already has his classes at the school. And he can just add students and add classes through that admin side of the app itself. We haven't actually showed that. We didn't get that shown on the demo. We haven't got that far yet, but that's our plan as of right now.